The Barbarian Betrayal, chapters 40 and 41. Through the Fire in the Field. Despite the continued bombardment of the planet, we have been unable to penetrate the shielding protecting the machine's bunker, Commander Simvois reported. We will continue to saturate the area, but based on what we have seen thus far, I doubt we will see any significant change. What the hell is powering that thing? Admiral Otsoa asked. I have been speaking to several scientists within the fleet, Nasat answered, and several of them believe it may be a form of zero-point energy, somehow using the planet itself to create a massive Casimir effect to power it. He gave an embarrassed shrug. Do not ask me to explain any further. I am not a scientist, but given how well the shield is withstanding our weapons' fire. So it is a powerful energy source, Giaj Guyaz interjected. If we cannot defeat it with the weapons we have at our disposal within the fleet, how then are we to rid ourselves of the machine menace? He looked at the others gathered aboard Chiron. Given the simmering feud between him and Otsoa, it was the closest thing they had available to neutral territory, and shook his head. I know our prisoner stated that the bunker complex was only accessible on the ground, but even if it was being truthful, it still begs the question of how? Something tells me the only way we'll learn the answer to that question is to go down there and find out, the Admiral stated. General Nasat, is your team ready? A dark shadow passed across his face. Without more information, the only answer I can give you, Admiral, is that they are as ready as they are going to be. She nodded grimly. It'll have to be good enough then. Assemble your team and... Nasat cleared his throat, interrupting her. Given the situation, Admiral, I will lead a force to the surface to set up a perimeter around the anomaly. It is all but assured the machines will attempt to stop us. If that is so, I intend to be ready for them. The others all stared at him. I can't say I'm fond of that notion, General, Otsoa replied, putting yourself at risk like that. Admiral, we have all been at risk since we arrived in this system, and the loss of Admiral Matavosian proves that nowhere is safe, he said at last. A pall seemed to hang over the room at the mention of their deceased commander. Given their situation, they had been unable to hold so much as a memorial service, perhaps when all of this was over. The Admiral considered Nasat's words before finally giving him a nod. Very well, she agreed. I'm still not thrilled about it, but... Not so fast, the Dayaksh interjected, earning him a dirty look from Otsoa. Given what may be down on the surface, the possible technologies to be discovered, I will only agree to this plan if there is also a Konheim presence on this mission. After all, he said with a feral grin that no one confused with good humor, it is still our planet. An awkward silence followed the announcement until the Admiral finally responded. And just who are you planning on sending on this mission? She inquired, before muttering something under her breath. He gave her a look that would have melted butter. Why, I intend to follow General Nasat's fine example and lead the Konheim contingent myself. She shook her head, still muttering. I think this is where I make a comment about there being no fools like old fools, but since it won't make one goddamn bit of difference anyway, I won't bother. How charitable of you, Giaj said coolly. Otsoa fixed him with a hard stare. Just make sure the rest of your people understand who's in charge up here, she shot back, since you're so determined to take part in this damn fool mission. They will answer to you, Admiral, he replied. I will make certain of it. She shook her head once again. Damned idiots, she hissed at them both. Tango inspected the twins with a jaundiced eye before shaking her head. The rest of the wrecking crew lounged nearby, more than happy to let her take the reins on this one as she walked a slow circle around the young Sauritars, looking for anything she could legitimately use to downcheck either of them. Unsurprisingly, she found nothing. Last chance to back out, she said finally. There's no shame in saying you're not ready, especially when it's true. She planted the barb deep and waited for a response. Chechla met her gaze without flinching. We have not changed our minds, Tango, she answered. My brother and I both volunteer for this mission. Even knowing it's likely to get you both killed? The human fired back. Tychist nodded. Even knowing that. He and his sister shared a brief look before he continued. We have no wish to die, Tango, any more than you do. But the very beliefs that brought us here have not changed. Tango sighed and looked away. Gear up, then, she said quietly, before turning to Musashi. Load 'em up, she ordered. They're young, and they're built for it. Copy that, he agreed, waving the pair over as he started hauling out equipment and ammunition. Watching the team prep, Tango unsnapped the long black case and flipped it open, revealing the deadly-looking sniper rifle within. Her fingers gently caressed the sleek barrel, the precision optics, before hefting it from its container and working the action. Crisp and clean. One last job, baby, she whispered, as she started loading up as well. Shuttles launched from the hangar bays, forming up over the planet as they gathered while a squadron of Copperhead fighters flew escort. The LZ was about as prepped as one could hope. Given the amount of ordnance dropped on the site, it looked like a moonscape. The journey was a short one, measured in minutes, and as the landed shuttles began disgorging their passengers, the fighters remained overhead, ready to fire on anything that moved. The perimeter was dug into place, weapons mounted and manned, supplies delivered in case of a siege, while Admiral Otsoa's task force surrounded the planet, high above the ionosphere. With the rest of the enemy fleet still out there, it was up to her to keep them from interfering. The machines hung just out of range, observing what was taking place, but as of yet had taken no further action. Both on the ground and in space, the Allied fleet was digging in for the long haul. General Nasat stepped out of his shuttle to find Jiaj Guyaz already waiting for him, his 4 arms clasping his as the Konhim threw back his head and laughed. Just like old times, is it not? The Diaksh grinned, as the Sorotar glimpsed his children disembarking from another shuttle with Tango and the others. Not exactly, he said quietly, his thoughts a million kilometers away as they moved to inspect the boundaries of the LZ. Jiaj turned and followed his gaze before shaking his head. All these years and I still do not understand you, he sighed. You should be proud of the choice they have made. I wish I could be, Nasat answered, as they both stared at the massive hemisphere of energy shimmering in the middle of their cantonment. Any thoughts on how we will breach that? The Konhim asked. Not yet, he responded. The scientists and engineers are getting set up to study it as we speak. Hopefully their investigations will bear fruit. Bah! The Diaksh growled. I grow weary of these games. How I long to just smash something, he prodded Nasat. The Sorotar sighed. I am certain we will find something to slake even your taste for adventure soon enough, he said. I think we found it. Nasat raised an eyebrow at the human greybird. Found what exactly? A way into the bunker, he clarified. I've been coordinating with the science team and they think they've figured out a way in. I'll admit, a lot of the math is over my head, but to think they can create a portal through the field by reflecting the energy back on itself. He grimaced. There's a catch, though. There is always a catch, Nasat sighed. What is it? That field is cranking out a lot of energy, and this portal they're designing, it won't be able to keep the door open for long. A few minutes, maybe. They're cannibalizing parts from some of Phalange's damaged shield generators as we speak to make it work. The Sorotar general regarded him thoughtfully. Could we not simply transport a generator down here? He asked. Perhaps that would give us a larger window. Greybird shook his head. Won't work. Those generators are huge. They were built in space and never designed to be placed on a planet's surface. They'd collapse under their own weight. Of course it could not be that simple, Nasat sighed once again. How long until we are ready? A few hours, they think, the hacker-turned-entrepreneur informed him. They claim it's a fairly straightforward application. Then let us hope the machines allow us that time, Nasat said quietly. Far above the planet, Admiral Otsoa was thinking the same thing. The machine fleet seemed to be mulling over their options, remaining just out of range. While the fleet itself hadn't moved from its original position, detailed scans from within the fleet itself told a very different tale. The body of vessels seemed to churn and roil with some strange rhythm, as if it were an alien heart beating. They're up to something, I know they are, she thought angrily to herself. But the question was what? There was no way they'd simply allow them to destroy the bunker without trying to stop them. But how? What was their plan? What were they thinking? And then, as if by some strange twist of fate they had heard her thoughts, the machines made their move. For a moment she thought they were reusing the same tactics that had shattered Phalange, scattering in 1,000 different directions to deny them a target. But as she watched them maneuver around her forces, she realized they had something else in mind. While much of their fleet was still dispersed in ones and twos, larger squadrons were taking position as well, surrounding her, still hanging just out of range. She had the sudden image of a wolf pack or a school of sharks working in concert to take down their prey. Pack hunters didn't smash their way through their quarry's defenses. They harassed and weakened their victims. A bite here, a gash there, attacking randomly from every direction. As long as they kept their prey contained, patience would do the rest. Even a Kodiak grizzly will bleed out given time. Admiral Otsoa was already issuing frantic orders when the first attack came in, a slashing raid designed to harry her forces and throw them off balance. They swooped in on a parabolic arc and opened fire with those hellish energy beams of theirs, already pulling away and burning hard for safety as her forces responded. It had been a test, a probe searching for weaknesses, and in its wake another ship lay broken and bleeding. "This is Otsoa to all ships. You are to condense the fleet and tighten up your intervals," she ordered, even as another flight of ships broke off, diving in for another run. The fleet responded, opening fire on this new threat, but they too fired a handful of volleys before speeding away. Machines didn't need sleep. They could keep this up forever. And unless Nasat and the others were successful down on Xuj, forever would come much sooner than anyone imagined. Giage gave the makeshift portal a dubious glance. "We are trusting our lives to that? I would sooner go into battle with a rusted blade." "No one is forcing you to take part in this," Nasat reminded him. "You could just as easily assume command of the perimeter. And allow you to claim all the honor for yourself?" "Ha!" the Diaksh laughed. "I think not." He checked that his sidearm was secured at his waist, then chambered around in his heavy-gauged slug thrower before flashing a grin at this Sorator companion, a grin that went unnoticed. Once again his attention was elsewhere, and it took no great effort to determine why. "Either go to them or stand down," the Konim said gruffly, as Nasat tore his eyes away. "You serve no one like this, least of all yourself." Tychist and Chechla stood with Tango and the rest of the team, laden with packs, as the crew made last-minute adjustments and checked their gear. Both carried a standard M7 rifle, and as he watched, they swung around almost in unison and solemnly returned his gaze. "Go to them," Giage urged. Nasat took a deep breath and shook his head. "And say what?" he asked. "I have no words." "If you cannot tell your children that you care for them, now of all times, then you at least owe them their due as fellow warriors," he snapped. "Tell them you will guard their backs and stand at their side." Nasat blinked in surprise as the Diaksh's rebuke slapped him across the face, and then slowly nodded. His smile was genuine as he watched the Sorator trot over to where his offspring stood waiting. The twins snapped to attention as he approached, holding their rifles at port arms. They stood waiting, their anxiousness coming off them in waves, and not all of it for the enemy. Conflicting emotions warred within him, turning him about like a pennant in a storm, until finally he stepped forward and gathered them both in his arms, holding them tight. The twins froze for a moment before returning their father's embrace. The trio stood together in silence, letting their physical contact speak for itself. "Well, it's about damn time," Tango snorted, interrupting the tableau. "I was wondering when you'd get off your high horse, no pun intended, and wish your kids luck." Nasat looked up at the human and sighed. "Eloquent as always," he said in a voice filled with emotion. His children looked back at him, each having difficulties of their own in finding their words, as he cupped their faces. "Be safe," he said softly, "and be strong." "And you, father," Takist replied, as his sister simply nodded in agreement. "When this is over, we will have much to discuss," the general said reluctantly. "But for now," he sighed and forced himself to focus. Follow Tango and the others' guidance, and harden yourselves for what is coming. Yes, father, Chechla whispered as he squeezed both their hands. An 2-minute warning! Greybird shouted. Portal is going live in 2 minutes! Grab the ammo, Tango ordered as they started picking up boxes. With no way to resupply until we drop that shield, we shove as much as we can through the portal until it fails. She fixed the young Soratars with a hard glare. When that thing goes down, be somewhere else. Yes, Tango, they said in unison, before returning their attention to their parent. I will see you on the other side, he said with a melancholy smile, giving them both one last hug before trotting back off, returning to Jiaj's side as they loaded up with weapons and ammunition themselves. The Diaksh gave him a wry look, but said nothing else as they prepared for the breach. Greybird conferred with the scientists preparing to activate the entryway and then lifted his head. 10 seconds! Get ready! All those standing nearby tensed like horses at the starting gate. They had laded every single individual down with gear, with more stacked close by. Other soldiers, those not part of the breaching team, stood ready to pass through as much as they could before the energy barrier reformed itself. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! He shouted, as the portal came to life, thrumming with power. A gap in the barrier several meters wide appeared, and once it did, those assigned to the teams charged forward. In less than 20 seconds, they had cleared the energy field, dropping the extra equipment as they hurriedly passed the stacked supplies through the rupture. They were tossed by those on the outside and caught by those within, as no one wanted to be caught in between when the makeshift device failed. Faster, damn you! Jiaj shouted, snarling at those still passing across their supplies. Those on the receiving end tossed them aside as soon as they were caught. Speed, not neatness, was the watchword here. They worked frantically until a high-pitched whine assaulted their ears. It's going critical! Greybird howled. Stand clear! A handful of crates made it through before the portal exploded in a burst of sparks, sending the barrier crashing back down. One last box of ammunition was caught by the failing portal, and what landed at their feet was sliced clean through as neatly as a scalpel's work. On the other side of the barrier, they were working to put out the fires started by the arcing equipment as the Nasat gazed at those nearby. Security team's out, he ordered, and I want a quick inventory of what we have before we move out. A chorus of "Aye, sirs" echoed around him as the Konhim Diaksh clapped him on the back. Come, old friend, he said with glee. Immortality awaits.